Have you ever wondered why certain healing modalities seem to find us exactly when we need them most? Or how ancient practices like Reiki continue to evolve and remain relevant in our tech saturated, fast paced world? Today's guests are the perfect guides to help us explore these questions. I'm thrilled to welcome Colleen and Robyn Benelli, the powerful mother daughter duo behind Reiki Lifestyle, a global platform that has transformed how thousands of people experience energy healing. Colleen's journey began with an extraordinary healing connection with her horse, Dakota, leading her to become a licensed Reiki master teacher for the International Center for Reiki Training and a respected shamanic practitioner with over 2 decades of experience. She's worked closely with William Rand, founder of the International Center for Reiki Training, helping develop innovative approaches that have shaped modern Reiki practice. Robyn's path to Reiki came through a near death experience that fundamentally altered her perception of energy and life's purpose. Together, they've created a unique blend of traditional Reiki teachings infused with shamanic wisdom, practical life applications, and a heart centered approach that makes these wonderful and powerful practices accessible to everyone. We'll explore their personal stories, unpack how Reiki works as both a spiritual path and a practical tool, and discover how these sacred practices can create everyday miracles in our own lives. Welcome, Colleen and Robyn. I'm so excited that you're both here today with me. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
excited to be here as well, Rose. Thanks for
Thank
having us.
you. Thank you. You've been such a big part of my personal journey as a Reiki master teacher. I've taken trainings from both of you, and I've met Colleen at the Reiki conference at Omega, and so I'm very blessed that you're both here today. So we'll start by just asking just some personal questions around your both of your journeys with Reiki. So, Colleen, I know that your journey with Reiki began through a very deeply personal experience with your horse, Dakota. You're very close to animals, especially horses. And looking back, how did that moment change your relationship with healing and intuition? And were you, I guess you were already a Reiki master at the time. So if you could just talk about that experience, I've heard it from you before, and it's just a very beautiful and inspiring story.
Well, actually, I was already in shamanic training for about 3 years. And when my horse went lame, he was only 5, so that was very young. And it was clear that it would be a permanent lameness. So one day I asked him what happened. It was a huge change in my lifestyle. Robyn was in 4-H with me with horses, and our whole world kind of revolved around it. And so when we discovered that he would be permanently lame, which for those of you that don't know means that he was injured, his leg was injured. So anyway, he showed me an image of me placing my hands on him and said that he went lame to deliver me to my power to heal. And so I didn't actually understand what I did understand what he meant, but even though I'd been in shamanic training, at that point, it never occurred to me that I would work in actually healing with people. I was making my living as a fiber artist. I liked what I was doing. It was very successful. And mainly, I didn't think I could do healing work because my empathy was so powerful that if someone was in pain, I would be in pain. And so I thought, well, this isn't going to be helpful to them or to me. So when I received Reiki after my horse gave me that message, I could feel the energy flowing through me to the other person rather than from my own life force energy. And it switched that empathy. I could understand the discernment about what was theirs and what was mine. So my intuition was really strong always. Um, but that empathy piece was the big piece that changed I thought I would be working on animals because, of course, my Reiki was encouraged by my horse. But actually, as I was working on him, he said, "No, you need to work on people." So that's what started my journey with people and understanding what was theirs, what was mine. And Reiki just became so compelling. I just had to do it all the time.
Yeah. Wow. What a great story. Yes, that's beautiful. And it's lovely that your horse was able to gift you that message. Yeah, lovely.
Yes.
Robyn, I know that you transitioned. Well, you've always been a part of Reiki, having your mom. I've been a Reiki master practitioner for many years. But your transition to Reiki followed something very different, something some people never go through. You had a near-death experience. Would you mind sharing your story?
Yeah, so I had, let's see, I think I was 30. I had a near-death experience. I had a near fatal seizure, and I did cross over. But what's interesting about that process is that it wasn't a right away thing. So a lot of people talk about after an experience like that, because they've experienced something that's, um, like that ethereal aspect of where we go, that it's like, okay, there's this before and this after. There was with me personally, but as far as understanding all of this, I wouldn't say that was a right away thing, if I'm being completely honest. But what it did do is it changed how I think I perceived my own intuition. It changed how I perceived, um, what also is somewhat important in this life. And there were some decisions that were made afterwards because of that, such as my husband and I hadn't had kids yet. And like, okay, that is something that we know we want. And what it caused me to do is it caused me to say yes and be more open more easily. So kind of cracked me open, to be fair, would be a good way to say it. So many, and the reason why I talk about it in that way is because so many people say I, had the experience with God or angels or however they, that's how we hear about those experiences a lot. And because of that, I know what I know now. And there is a knowing that I have, from that experience and that process of crossing over and where I went and all of that. Um, but what it caused me to do is just kind of starting to say yes, and to maybe now in retrospect, I would call it a bit of an ego death, because I was pretty tightly wound and pretty closed up. And from that experience, that is where I did say yes to starting to work with Colleen. um, and it was more on a part-time basis, as I was supporting myself, also as an artist. And then it was a couple of years later that I started working full-time with Reiki Lifestyle. And I know that that process, even though in the moment I wasn't super, super conscious of it, I know that that process is what led me to all of this, because it did lead me to just say, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm saying yes, and a level of trust with that. And then from there, everything else unfolded. And again, that openness that came from that experience, a knowing of what that place is, came from that experience. And I do think that all of my future self, Reiki, the divine, however you want to describe that, came through in that time frame and led me to all of the unfolding that came from there, and working and returning to Reiki, because I had diverted from it for a good amount of time while I was in my culturally created self. So,
Wow.
so yeah, it did actually lead me back. It just wasn't like okay, this happened and now I know. It was a little bit more of a slow unfolding. And I like to share about that part because I don't know, maybe it's just not talked about, but you don't hear about that as a common experience after a near-death experience, but it was that changed me.
You know, you both mentioned intuition. A lot of people talk about their intuition or the fact that they may not have intuition. And what are your thoughts about that? I know you're both intuitively guided. I've always been that way as well. But we all have that, I feel. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll go ahead and jump in first because of something you said. Colleen has a lot to talk about on this subject too, but I actually was one of those people that didn't think I was intuitive. It took me a long time to get to that place of me understanding my intuition. And now I am in relationship with my intuition, as many of us are. Um, so I am a somewhat of a like left brain person. Colleen is a very creative person, and while practical and those things, she's a creative. And growing up under that, and not being creative in the same way, I always thought, oh, because I'm not creative in that way, I'm not a creative. I don't have that in me. And so that extrapolated over to intuition, because I think that we perceive intuitive people as that, this right brained person that is very in touch with the flow and their feelings and creativity. And so we always associate one with the other. And I know I did too. And so I thought, because I wasn't that, I'm not creative and I'm not intuitive. And so I shut down that part of myself for a long time. I have a college degree in business finance, and I thought that that's who I was. Well, through this work, I have really learned how my intuition works, and it is very different even still to that process. I think my intuition, I'm claircognizant. So I know my intuition. I find a lot of intuition through PowerPoints and through Excel spreadsheets and thoughts. And so that what I've realized is that now I'm not trying to make my intuition like Colleen's. I'm trying to learn my own intuition on a different level. I am developing. Well, it's always a development. I mean, I'm in a very different place than I used to be with it. Now I know that I'm intuitive. I understand that yes, that I talked about. I know now that that's my intuition. When I have that compulsion, I'm just going to trust it and go for it. But it's okay that my intuition is a little more linear. It's that piece. So I'm not trying to make myself be like her anymore. Instead, I am leaning into how I am, and I'm developing that further and listening to that further.
Colleen, can you share a little bit about your thoughts about how people can connect with their intuition, perhaps?
Well, it was, I think, something that I've always been intuitive, but at 68 years old, definitely during my my younger years, intuition was one of those things that was talked about, like, oh, women have intuition. And it was kind of a chuckle, and it was really underdeveloped and also oftentimes even suppressed. So, seeing what is happening in today's world with intuition being brought back as part of our natural human intellect, our authentic intellect, to me is one of the most important things that I personally care about conveying, and how Reiki energy actually enhances your intuition. So when I first started teaching Reiki, one of the very first things that I noticed was, even on day one, in the very first morning of Reiki 1, people were receiving intuitive insights, but they did not know what to do with it. They didn't have any sense of how to believe in it. One of the number one questions we get is, am I making this up? How do I know I'm not making this up? And so I am so excited for these younger generations to be raised and taught at early ages and all the way through their adulthood to listen to their intuition or listen to their gut. And I see it over and over again, like listen to your gut, listen to your intuition. But a lot of people, just as Robyn defined it, don't have any sense of what that is and think that intuition means you have to be clairvoyant or you have to see your intuition, not realizing sometimes you think your intuition. If you're an analytical thinker, left brain, you're more likely to think it in your own words and so dismiss it because it sounds like yourself speaking to yourself. Um, but you learn how to discern what is what I call your bright mind and what is just your normal, ordinary mind, which also equally is important. So, our human intellect, our authentic intellect, all of it is a part of our natural ability. And so, learning the different clair senses, if people are listening to this that don't have any idea, Google or use ChatGPT and find out
Mm.
more about clair senses. Those are the place to find out how yours works and then be able to develop it the way that it works for you.
Yeah, that's great advice. And the more you work at developing, you may even unlock some of the other senses that may be dormant. Can you talk about Reiki Lifestyle, maybe about the trainings and also your podcast, just a general overview so that people have an understanding of what you do with that?
So it started really with my original business name back in probably 2003, The Color of Reiki. And that name came to me because one of the children that I worked with had autism, and he went from very low functioning to very high functioning with Reiki. And he always called me the color doctor. And everything that we talked about between us was really telepathically conveyed through color, and Reiki enhanced that. But the name itself was an awkward name, and people always wondered, well, what does that mean, or what is your name? And one day, a colleague of mine said he had channeled my business name, and it was Reiki Lifestyle. So I didn't really understand it at the time. Lifestyle was a whole new term back then, so it was unusual. And I had done a Reiki journey to the spirit of my Reiki practice. And in that journey, I was told that my purpose for developing my Reiki practice was to help Reiki become so mainstream that children would grow up with it as a part of their health care, their wellness care, and that they could grow up and decide that they wanted to be a Reiki practitioner and it could support them financially and their family, which was news to me. I did not know that was my purpose. And so, what I really would say is that Reiki lifestyle itself developed my practice and guided me all the way through. So, it was a collaborative um, guidance with Reiki, and then my natural inclination. I've always been self-employed, so I like big business practices. At that time, websites were new, even computers were fairly new, social media didn't exist yet. So all of that had to be done. Anything that we did was cut and paste and learning how to do that at the printer, right?
Right.
So, and everything had to be hand drawn and everything. And so then developing through social media. And then Robyn is the one, and her husband, Sean, is the one who
Mhm.
said in, I think it was 2012, that I should have a podcast. It took me 2 years to even know what a podcast was, even though I was doing it. And so, yeah, they chuckle at me the whole time. And I called it our global Reiki teleconference call. And so that continued, but that really started because everything we do is about how do we provide resources and Reiki education. So that particular method was developed because people sent so many emails asking questions. I thought, well, let's just answer them all together. Let's get together and talk about it. And so that was the development of the podcast. When Robyn joined Reiki Lifestyle, that was a big game changer because she brought in another level of expertise on all levels with both Reiki, business development, technology, all of those things. And we work really well together. So that is a great advantage and big blessing for me. It gave me an extra um, oomph and continuing, and also looking that it fulfills that early message of children growing up thinking they can do this and it can actually support them.
The only thing that I would add is that Colleen said about the free resources. I think that that's a big thing that we really enjoy doing is, with the Distance Reiki Share, with the podcast, having conversations. Also, we have our Next Step Reiki training classes in addition to animal Reiki and human Reiki, like the, traditional Reiki classes. And those classes are exploration and skill development courses for after you have taken a Reiki class. And the reason they use Reiki journey techniques, so you learn to become a really proficient Reiki journeyer. And the reason that those developed was because people come out of their Reiki 1 and 2 or the Reiki master, and they are looking for additional training. They're looking for additional exploration. They want the community. There's a lot of different reasons why and it's beginning to become more and more common. But at the time when we started this, I think it was back in 2017 or 18, there wasn't a lot. And there are in other modalities, but not within using Reiki energy. And so combining shamanic skills, combining Reiki really helped in the development of those courses because we just saw that there was a need for additional support. And that is where those classes, again, that's another one that we really listened to the energy about what those classes wanted to be. But that's the main thing is like, okay, how can people hone their skills? How can people receive additional support? And that's where those classes were born out of. And the only other thing that I would really like to add is that there's 2 of us. There's more than 2 of us because we have a team, but there's 2 of us that have like an equally vested interest in this, business and our heart intentions and things like that. We work really well together. And so when one can't be there, the other one can.
So I want to circle back to something that you've said, both of you, Reiki Journey. Can you talk about what that is? Because maybe people don't know how you integrate shamanism with Reiki, and Reiki Journey is a big part of what you do, either in one of your weekly Reiki shares or on your podcast or in your trainings.
Well, again, going back to our conversation about day 1, people start having intuitive impressions during Reiki sessions. Now, not everybody does, so if you don't, it's not like you should, but it happens commonly. And what I would say more commonly is that all people have them. They are still learning how their intuition works and how to understand how they have intuitive impressions. So when I started with Reiki, it was a very strict style. Back in 2000, there were a lot of very strict rules, a lot of wrong ways to do Reiki. And one of those wrong ways was to really understand the level of telepathy, the words for it, telepathy, psychic impressions, intuitive impressions, all of those things combined actually happen with Reiki energy. But because it was considered inappropriate as part of a practice, I saw it as something that was actually being suppressed. And my thought around it was, how do we teach people the skill? And of course, I had developed the skill through my shamanic training, and really, they're doing the same thing. How do we access higher levels of consciousness? In my case, I do have an interest in accessing an expanded reality of this life on Earth and an expanded reality of the spiritual dimensions. So, on all of those levels, Reiki energy actually gives us a greater access to our consciousness, gives us a greater ability to expand our inner awareness, outer awareness of an expanded reality. And then also, how do we access spirit guides, spiritual realms that are beyond this realm and another level of consciousness? And so we really worked with it. A lot of it started with the actual classes, Robyn and I working together, and we thought we were going to teach how to create Reiki ceremonies, because that's another area that we have a lot of skill in. And the energy actually came in and said, no, you're going to teach this, and you're going to teach people how to develop those natural abilities using Reiki energy. So if you want to compare what is the difference in shamanic journeying and Reiki journeying, they're just two different techniques and different energies that you're working with. So in my shamanic training, I studied with many different traditions of indigenous people and learning how to journey in those traditions. So, for instance, in the Celtic realms, working in the fairy realms, working in the nature spirits, working in, the oak, ash, and thorn, which is very much part of my genetics and past life, working in Tibetan or Nepali or African, and a huge amount of my training was in Lakota traditions. And finding that Reiki energy is just simply another energy and another pathway to access higher consciousness, access our expanded realities here and beyond, and that I could use the distance symbol as a bridge of light to travel to these realms, travel inward to my higher consciousness, travel to the extraordinary reality here on the earth, and then be able to access as a bridge of light into the spiritual realms. And with the particular spiritual guides that I work with Reiki energy. So, a Reiki journey is really just another technique, another method, another energy that we are working with to be able to access higher levels of consciousness that are a little bit harder to do in our ordinary mind. What we do find is that through the training that people receive in Reiki journey techniques, which, by the way, we have articles on our website with it. We have YouTube things on it, so you don't have to just take a class. We do it all the time in all of our resources. So, but anyway, what we have discovered with it over time and through so many different students developing these abilities and these skills takes us back to the first conversation we had about understanding your intuition and how it works. And then, most importantly, how it actually applies to your daily life. because to me, that's what all of this has, is that ability to apply it. How do we apply our spirituality, our expanded awareness, our inner awareness, our higher consciousness in our daily, practical daily life? Because we're all living that life, right? We're not off on a mountainside where we are spending all day in these higher levels of spirit and consciousness. And so, how do we bring that into those higher levels of consciousness, into the practicality of living every day?
Yeah. I know you've had a lot of conversations on some of your podcast episodes, and I know in your training about that practicality, and you've often labeled it or have used the term Reiki on the fly that you've used,
Yes.
and I think people that become Reiki practitioners sometimes forget that they can just use Reiki anytime, anywhere. It's not just a ceremony that they have to perform in a certain way, in a certain fashion, and that there's practical ways to use it. And that also goes back to the Reiki journeying. You support that training in, I'm sorry, is it the next step Reiki that you help people to enhance or develop that technique?
So we have two trainings. One is the Next Step Reiki, which is actually a 3-year training that, if you continue through all of it, is a 3-year training. There's a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3, and they are each 1 year. So we meet monthly, and for 12 months. Level 1 is really learning about Reiki journey techniques, developing your intuition. We do a little bit of journeying for others, but that really comes in year 2, where we learn about the spirit reveal technique. And that is a session technique that Colleen and I have developed that, again, combines Reiki journey or shamanic techniques with Reiki and Reiki journey techniques. So we learn all about how to, do past life healing, ancestral healing, things like that through Reiki energy for ourselves, but also for others. And then in the 3rd year, we learn about how to channel all of it that we've learned out loud. And in addition, learning additional skills through that. And then we do have another training that is called Explore the 12 Heavens. And that is where every month, it's a 1-year course. And every month we explore a different heaven of the consciousness. So starting here on, or you can think of them as the levels of consciousness. That's kind of how I perceive them. So we start here in the earth, which is the first heaven of consciousness, the physical realm. And then we explore 1 to 12 essentially. And the last month is the 12th heaven, which is source or source consciousness. You learn skills in that class, but that's more of an exploration class. And then we do have like quarterly Q&As. They're all live on Zoom. So you are, in a learning environment with us, as well as a group, our different cohorts that are together through them. So you do have to be Reiki 1. Reiki 2 is preferred, but we definitely have done Reiki 1 just because you have to have that basis. We use Reiki energy to do the journey work. So you have to have that basis of understanding about Reiki energy. And we, in our lineage, we keep the symbols sacred. So we don't say the symbols unless you are tuned to them, and we use the symbols in class. So the first 3 symbols, we use them in class. And so we like to know that people are attuned to Reiki in order to be able to do that. So that is why we want people to be attuned to Reiki level 2 to take the courses.
Yeah, and I always encourage people to take both of the training because it feels so complete when you're taking levels 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And having the
Great.
symbols and having just more opportunity to use Reiki in your life.
And I feel like understanding the distance aspect, because in Reiki 1, of course, you still can do that, but having the distance aspect for our human minds can be round out that training really,
Yeah.
well. So
How have you seen it, or how do you see it growing even more? Let's put it that way. We've seen it grown a lot in the past 15 or so years, 20 years, changes to the practice and more acceptance. How do you see it changing? What's your vision for how you want to see Reiki develop or change?
Well, again, I would like to see Reiki be so mainstream that it is commonly either practiced in the household by people themselves, or people take uh, their children and themselves to a Reiki practitioner for treatment in the same way that, we do self-care and wellness care through massage, acupuncture, yoga classes, all of the different things that help you physically, but also I see Reiki as such a practice that helps us connect spiritually. And because it does not have a particular belief system, it really gives people access to their belief system, their inner truth. That can be anything from, thinking in terms of the universal realms of biofields, electromagnetic fields, the energy of the planets and the solar systems, galactic realms, for instance, but all the way to a deep religious perspective, if that is what they have. And then also for many of us that are in what I would call independent spirituality practices, um, it takes us each to our own inner truth, and it doesn't have any preference around that. The energy itself is always coming from a higher realm of consciousness, an enlightened realm. And so the energy itself only has the higher frequencies of creation within it, of life force energy within it. So I would like to see, of course, it become even more and more mainstream. And from the time that I received that original message, it was difficult back in those days. There was a lot of criticism. Robyn and I did one of our early podcasts together about what it was like for her as a teenager to grow up in a very conservative small town in Oregon with very alternative parents. She received a lot of, I would call it religious trauma from her peer groups. And so did I, other than I was an adult by this time and more comfortable choosing my own path. But we definitely received it. I definitely received quite a bit of even estrangement from some of my family members because of it. So was a lot of criticism back then that we really don't encounter today. All of my family members honor and respect what we do, even if they're not participating. I don't have that judgment anymore. We've found our community, and I think that is the biggest thing happening in Reiki right now that is so essential in today's world is that community building and finding a group of people that we are not debating our belief systems, we're not debating our political ideals. We are truly moving into how do we gain access to wellness within in our mind, in our body, in our spirit, so that we can apply it to our daily life. One of our mantras that we have been teaching in our Distance Reiki Share, which is free, by the way, for anybody listening every Tuesday morning. It's online and it's very global. But our main mantra when we started it in 2020 was stay stable, be kind. And that piece of it right now, when things get chaotic or difficulty, or maybe there's conflict or anything else, just do that Reiki on the fly, invite Reiki in, stay stable, be kind. And maybe 5 minutes later, no, just stay stable, be kind. And Reiki energy helps me achieve that foundational, just again, I care about being stable. I care about being kind. And because of that, I believe I also receive that kindness in return. And so, where I see it going in the future, I think it is ever evolving. And one of the things that we have really been focusing on is learning how to ask the questions we don't even know we have, because it is in the questions that the answers can be provided, connected. And so then also asking Reiki energy and our spiritual guidance for what are the questions we need to be asking so we can evolve and we can let the energy know we're ready for those next steps. Because I believe when we talk about Reiki evolving, we are evolving to the abilities Reiki has, and it will continue to provide us with greater levels of that ability to evolve as we are able. And so as it hears our questions, that's when it knows, oh, they're ready for bigger answers. They're ready for these next levels. And so that's why, even Usui said way back when that the greatest thing for a Reiki practitioner to do is to continue to receive greater levels of quantities and qualities of the Reiki energy that they channel. And so I see us doing that. It was never meant to be static. It has always grown. We have always evolved, and it has always helped us depending on where we are individually and then also in our collective consciousness too.
Beautiful. I was getting emotional as you were talking about that because I really felt that resonated so loudly. And it's a relationship. I've always felt that I've nurtured a relationship with the Reiki energy. It's like having your best friend with you, someone that you can count on, someone that you can speak to, ask those questions, and be there for you when you need that guidance. What are the next steps for Reiki Lifestyle? Is there anything that is new and exciting coming down the pike for that? I have a feeling there is.
There
You're
always
always
is.
changing and you're always evolving, and it's just so wonderful to see how much you've grown in the past several years. I was just curious if there's anything new and exciting coming down the line.
But there's always new things.
I'm laughing because there's a lot.
Yeah,
I see it.
we have a lot coming up. Um, so Colleen's continuing to travel for classes. That remains a little bit more challenging for me just because I have a young kid and it's hard to travel when you have children at this age. And the thing about talking about it is that it's hard to know which one is actually going to come to fruition and which one is not.
Well, you don't have to share, but I know that
Well,
you have
what I
things.
will share is one of the things that we have been trying to develop for a long time, and it feels like it's finally developing into a material thing, are products. And so we are looking at developing additional, self-study online courses, not Reiki 1 and 2 self-study online courses. Those will always be live, but additional support courses, additional materials that people can use for skill training, that they can use in their practices, things like that. We've always wanted to do a product like merchandise line. We think that that's going to come to fruition, but it took us. We were talking about our new website for 2 years before it actually came to fruition. So
It's
we say these
beautiful.
things,
Yeah.
and just so everybody knows out there, definite purpose, sustained over time, produces results. So things can take what timeline those are on. We
Yeah.
are unsure,
It's
but
on a Reiki timeline.
it's on its own timeline. We are two people who balance family life and work life, and so there's all of those things that we continue to keep a priority as well. But that is where we are headed, that we have been wanting to develop for a really long time, and we're really, really excited about what we think will be manifesting here in the near future. And that is just additional things for Reiki practitioners. And then if we do have the merchandise, that will be outside of just Reiki. People can there's more spiritual
Right.
here as well, not just Reiki.
Right. Oh, I love that. Who doesn't love things and merchandise, right? It's fun.
I want
So
to I want to add to that a little bit too,
sure.
because always our thought, and I'm speaking to other people that are doing the same thing. Our thought is always in how do we provide greater resources for Reiki training, Reiki skills, Reiki, the ability to use Reiki. And, in today's world, a lot of that is through self-study because people need to be able to do things in their own timing, right? And then also the other thing that we think in terms of is how do we provide resources for teachers, Reiki teachers to teach also. So that's a lot of what is behind all of this, like what will help people. For instance, one of the things that we're talking about is, listening skills. Number one skill for a Reiki practitioner to develop, but the content itself is not very exciting to hear about. But how do we teach more about that? And we have so much content that we have developed over the years. And another one is how to manifest your dreams, meditations, invocations. And what we want is for it to be useful for people to be able to use for themselves, but also to be able to use in their Reiki practices.
I do want to say really quickly before we move on, but one thing that we did get done is we have started what we call Reiki Conversations. So that's a blog that's on our website, as well as an email that has like kind of additional things to that. And so if you sign up for our email list, you'll get the emails weekly, and then the conversations are also they're released weekly.
I do encourage everyone to connect with your website, with your information, even if you're not a Reiki practitioner. You don't have to be a Reiki practitioner to be a part of this wonderful community. I mean, you welcome everyone and everything and every animal and every being. And it's a great opportunity to be introduced to the world of Reiki. I will link everything in the show notes. Is there anything else that you wanted to share just to wrap up, or any message for the audience?
I think the one thing I haven't said that I think would be really beneficial for people, so many of our free resources are provided on YouTube. Reiki Lifestyle on our YouTube channel. And when you mentioned that people don't have to have Reiki to be able to access the Reiki journeys that we talked about here, we actually do a Reiki journey every week, just about at our Distance Reiki Shares, which are free. But then they're also posted on our YouTube channel and our podcast channel. So people can listen to it. You don't have to watch it, but people can just listen to it. So between the podcast and the YouTube channel, and then the Reiki conversations that Robyn talked about on our website too, there is just so much information there. And the Reiki journeys, like you can just listen to what you feel like. You don't have to be sequential. You can skip around. It's all there. But Anyway, I just wanted to mention that because it's an easy way to find the resources.
They're
Yes.
guided, so you don't have to be Reiki attuned, and that is done very intentionally for those that are Reiki curious. Maybe you've heard of it, or maybe you have had a few sessions. You're not ready to take a class yet, things like that. They're guided Reiki journeys and information, so you don't have to be Reiki attuned to do those.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And I will put everything in the show notes. And yes, there's so many resources and I love it. Thank you so much, you both for being here today. I'm really blessed and to be part of your community for so long and to continue to grow with your community as well. So thank you so much.
Oh,
Thanks for
thank you,
having us,
Rose.
Rose.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you too.